as we teach in yoga philosophy also, which is integral part of that Vedic knowledge. So this whole race of human civilization, so-called Homo sapiens in modern medicine, it's a group of one family. So the genetic code, not only of the physical body, but the genetic code of the consciousness remains the same. We all belong to that one divine force. We all come from there. So what we call him as Param Atman in Vedanta, the supreme consciousness, and all of this are his subdivisions, so-called Jivatmas, or subconsciousness, living within all of us. So before I start my presentation, the way the tradition is, I will chant one powerful healing mantra dedicated to all those who desperately need it now and here, especially all those corona warriors who are fighting against this deadly disease, and all those people who have been suffering, and all those who have been hurt already, to relieve, give peace to their souls also. This shloka, this Sanskrit hymn has got multi-dimensional application. So let's meditate on this mantra. I will chant this and then I'll tell you the meaning of it. And you want to incorporate it within you at the consciousness level. So just pay attention to this mantra. Take a long deep breath and close your eyes for a minute with me. Om Bheshajam Bheshajam Mahabheshajam Raja Gate Om. You can open your eyes when you're ready. Om Bheshajam Bheshajam Mahabheshajam Raja Samudgate Swaha. The literal meaning of this chanting of the mantra is, O the ruler of the rulers, the healer of the healers, the master of masters, you have to prevail, exist forever, forever, and forever. And anything in the form of negativity, negativity of thoughts, negativity of emotions, negativity of bacteria and pathogens, negativity within us, within microcosmos, and negativity around us at the macrocosmos level, all of that has to be offered to the holy fire to convert it into positivity. This is the literal meaning of this Sanskrit mantra, Om Bheshajam Bheshajam Mahabheshajam Raja Samudgateya Swaha. The modern day investigations have revealed that just the chanting of this mantra itself is so powerful, fills you up with positivity and hope, fills you up with such a confidence, willpower within, so that it increases your immunity, not only at the physiological level, but at the consciousness level as well. So that is the power of this mantra, Om Bheshajam Bheshajam Mahabheshajam Raja. They say even the modern day investigations reveals that if you do examination of bacteria and pathogens under microscopic examination, they also stop multiplying and get stunned to hear this chanting of the healing mantra. So some interesting studies have been done already on this mantra. So with this, I open today's session, and as Guru Dilip ji said, it's a very auspicious occasion because it is celebrated as World Naturopathy Day, especially in India, where naturopathy, Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, they all go hand in hand, having kind of a brother-sister relationship, where naturopathy is nothing but something which is coming directly from nature. It's a treatment, it's a healing art coming directly from Mother Nature, where nobody else created any system of healthcare. The Mother Nature was the best healer. As we talk in the basic principles of Ayurveda also, we talk about the 5-element theory when we talk about the history of origin or history of evolution of this earth. And all those 5 elements are also coming from the Mother Nature. And they are the biggest healers or so-called physicians. I call it like the 5-element physicians. So in Sanskrit, we call them Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, and Prithvi. In English language, just to make it understandable, although English language itself is not very complete, there are many expressions missing. But in Sanskrit, we find beautiful expression of Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, and Prithvi as synonyms of those 5 elements we are going to talk about today. So if we talk about the word Ayurveda, first of all, I would like to share the basic meaning of this word Ayurveda. The word Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word, combination of 2 words, Ayu and Veda, where Ayu means life and Veda means knowledge. So the complete expression about the word Ayurveda means knowledge about life. But there is something closer or with a similar meaning expression available in English language, so-called a word, which is called as science. Or, well, instead of calling it science, let's call it biology first. When you're talking about biology, where bio means anything which is living, and the word logy means anything which has got logical reason behind. So the word biology is considered as science of life, according to modern day expression. Now, the meaning of the word biology, if it is science of life, and the meaning of the word Ayurveda, let us compare the two, is knowledge about life. So if we make a careful analysis between what is the difference between knowledge about life and science of life, if I ask you this question, what would be the answer? Are they two the same things?
I would say that you just touched on one of the reasons that is a difference, the study that shows that there are things that might not be fully understood yet, but that is knowledge, but has not been scientifically vetted.
In other words, the way we say in Ayurveda, Jnanam Anantam, which means Jnana is knowledge also, and Jnana or pure knowledge is beyond space and time. But whatever we rediscovered in last few hundred years, that is what we interpreted as science. In English language, since we all understand that common language, we call it as science. But the word knowledge has a much wider vision and expression behind. So science is tiny part of knowledge. That is what I'm trying to say, in other words. Knowledge goes beyond space and time. We haven't been able to even touch the tip of the iceberg when we talk about the word knowledge. It is boundaryless. As the Vedic philosophy says, it is beyond space and time. The vastness is unimaginable. So that is a beautiful expression when we use the word Ayurveda, which is complete knowledge about life, which tells us more than what we could imagine. It is more than what we are being taught at the medical schools. It is beyond the body. It is not only the physical body and its ailments, it's beyond that. It is beyond death also. So when we say the word Ayurveda, it is complete knowledge about life. It is not only being science of life or biology. When I say complete knowledge about life, it says that it is a complete knowledge about physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of an individual. The word Ayurveda means art of being. That is a complete expression. When I say the word art of being what? Art of being right. Art of being balanced. Art of being balanced in what capacity? Art of being balanced physically, mentally, and spiritually. It was not only a physical well-being of the body, whereas in modern medicine, in so-called science of life, we talk about the physical body, and we say that when you are sick, come to me and I'll give you a pill to keep you healthy, to make you healthy. But Ayurveda says, no, no, no. Why the hell you have to go get sick and then go to the doctor? You have to learn how to continue to remain healthy and sustain through. So the prime goal of Ayurveda was swasthya rakshanam in Sanskrit. With the word swastha has deep meaning, where swa means self, within. Yeah, stha means sthir, which means balanced, which means stable, which means firm, which means balance within. That doesn't mean just the physical body, balance of physical, mental, and spiritual aspect of the body. So it was a package deal of all these three aspects. Why people like Dr. Deepak Chopra became so popular in the Western world and with the national bestseller author of more than 57 books? Because he started talking about the same language of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, which is nothing but coming from the Vedic philosophy of healthcare. Now, if we are talking about the word Ayurveda, before that, let us go back into the history of medicine. For that, we have to go into the history of documentation of medicine. So if I ask you, what is the so-called oldest documented system of healthcare on this earth? What would be the answer? Is it modern medicine? Or modern medicine is hardly a few hundred years old. But history of healthcare or history of knowledge about life must be as old as life on this earth. If we are saying that history of life on this earth is starting from the era of dinosaurs, which is about 12,000 years old, more or less, according to modern day historians, then history of health starts from there, when a little child of a baby of a dinosaur overate something and he had a stomachache. Right? So which physician did he go to when he had a stomachache? Was there a clinic there? Was there some kind of Harvard Medical School or something like that? No. So who cured him? Who was the primary care physician there? It was Mother Nature. It was the experience by which all those living creatures started learning with their own wisdom. So that little baby, what did he do? The common sense says, well, he might have had some herb, go and bite the herb, or drink some water from the pond, or sat in a strange posture, which is so-called yogic posture according to him, putting both his legs into his tummy and squeezing, right? Or he got a scold out of his mom. She said, the mom said, I told you not to do this or not to overeat, and you didn't listen to me. And now he's scared. He says, I'm sorry. Now he's realizing the mistake. Now, drinking that water, eating that herbal tea, or sitting in the sun, or fasting, or sitting in a strange posture of so-called yoga posture for him, and scolding from the mom, all of them were actually acting like a medicine for him. And process of self-healing started. That means history of medicine or history of life is, or history of healthcare or wellness is as old as history of life on this earth. It is that simple. But because we live in the era of so-called modern day science and we want evidences and proof for everything. So let's talk about the evidences now. If you want to go into the history of evidences of medicine and healthcare, we have to go into the history of documentation of scripts. If you're talking about the history of documentation of scripts, then we have to find out what is so-called the oldest documented script of healthcare written, and where was it written. So if I'm saying so, the same question which I have been asking in various medical schools of the world, let it be UCLA, University of Miami Medical School, or even Harvard, and many other places where I have been visiting, in US also and other parts of the world. And everywhere I tell, no Indian should answer this question. I want this answer from a Westerner, from their point of view. So if I ask them that where is the history of documentation and where is so-called the oldest script on this earth, or the language which is so-called mother tongue of all the modern European languages, which is that language? So many people raise their hands. And what is the answer do I get? Anybody, any guess? Sanskrit, they say. Then I tell them that, is it not a matter of proud privilege for us to know that history of medicine comes from Sanskrit, from Vedanta, Indian in origin? So I didn't want any Indian to answer that question because I wanted not to be biased. So coincidentally, surprisingly, the oldest documented healthcare system of the world was documented in Sanskrit language, and that is why the word Ayurveda is the oldest documented healthcare system of the world, documented in Sanskrit language. That is the history of documentation of medicine. Now, going a little further, as I said, Ayurveda says it is the art of being balanced, art of being balanced, art of being correct physically, mentally, and spiritually. So Ayurveda has some basic rules, which says that we are all made up of 5 elements, as we talked in the beginning. Those 5 elements are air, fire, water, earth, and ether. Now Ayurveda says these 5 elements combine in a particular permutation and combination to make 3 vital forces in the body. An air and ether element combine to make something called air energy, or we call it Vata, which is symbolizing all the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Which is symbolizing all kind of movements in the body. Let it be beating of the heart, let it be expansion and contraction of the lungs, let it be walking, let it be talking. You know, my heart beats, I walk, I talk, I think. My blood flows, my hydrochloric acid releases in the stomach, acetylcholine releases, pituitary gland releases. So all those movement, flow of the biochemical secretions in the body is happening because of the driving force of the nervous system. We consider it as Vata. The characteristics of Vata are, this is a basic humor in the body, which is the physiological expression of the word Vata, which is movement. We say Vagati Gandhanyo, which means the one which moves is the air. Imagine we are sitting in a room and suddenly we turn on the fan, we feel strong wind blowing through. That and creates movement. Imagine we are in state of Florida and we experience tornadoes and hurricanes, although we don't see the air, but we feel the strong presence of that air element. Yeah. So air and ether combination makes a strong basic humor or physiological force in the body called vata, which symbolizes sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Second basic force in the body, second basic humor, it is called pitta. Pitta is expression of fire energy in the body. Let it be hydrochloric acid in the stomach, or salivary amylase in the throat, or a pituitary gland secretions, or the sperm and ovum secretion. All those kind of symbolic secretions would be considered as pitta force, force of transformation. That is what brings the chemical changes in the body. All the minerals which are combining in strange combinations and making all the biochemical changes in the body, it is symbolizing pitta. We also call it fire, or you can say digestive fire living in the stomach, or salivary amylase living in the throat. All those things, and the liver enzymes and the gallbladder secretions and the adrenal gland secretions, all the hormonal secretions would be categorized under pitta force, force of transformation. Third vital force in the body is called kapha. The word C-O-U-G-H, cough, also comes from the Sanskrit word kapha, which means phlegm, which means viscosity, which also has water and earth element. That's why kapha, or the phlegm, is a little bit of viscous, but it is thick, it is mucosal, but it has got most of water and earth element in it. In modern medicine expression, we already say that 90% of our human body is water anyway. So that is a strong expression of the presence of kapha. Kapha is considered as force of cohesion in the body, force of metabolism, force of tissue building. You know, when we are born, we are, like very small, this big. Yeah. And eventually what happens? We start growing vertically and horizontally, and we become tall human being one day. Men or women, depends on the sex. So that is this material expression of the kapha force, force of cohesion, force of fusion, because of which all those transformatory changes happen and we grow. So Ayurveda says these three basic principles are present within all of us. And the history of documentation of Ayurveda is about 5,000 years old, documented in world's oldest language called Sanskrit. And these five physiological forces are present within all of us. And these are called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. These are the combinations out of this five elements theory. They combine in a particular permutation and combination to make three vital forces in the body. Vata, again, once again, I'll repeat, is a combination of air and ether element. Pitta is fire element, and Kapha is combination of water and earth element. So Ayurveda says when these three vital forces are in a state of balance, then person remains healthy. But whenever they get out of balance, then we get according disease or according sickness. Initially there are initial symptoms, then it eventually becomes a disease. Now in layman's language, I'll give you some examples just to quickly touch the base there, and then we will go for some of the practical implementation of the principles of Ayurveda in our daily life. Now Ayurveda says these three vital forces go like strings of the guitar, like three strings are there. They resonate at different wavelengths, but they go like this, up and down and up and down and up and down, from life till death. So all these three forces are present within all of us, all the human beings, all the living creatures, including animals and other things also. But the ratio varies. Some people are more Vata, some are more Pitta, some are more Kapha, which means some are more airy, which means they are airy in walks, airy in thoughts, airy in actions. Think of people like, say, Michael Jackson, for instance. The way he was looking, he was lean and thin. He was very talkative. He was anxious and then he was nervous also. But he was like rock and roll kind of guy, moving all the time. His limbs go left and right, dancing on the roadside also. So even on the stage, he could never stand still. So that was more like airy-like personality. So because Vata was more predominant in him, as we said, movement is a characteristic of the air. They are light, they are thin, they are slim, they are airy. Airy in walks, airy in thoughts, and airy in actions. So that's Vata type personalities. Second type personalities are Pitta type. Those who are predominantly Pitta, predominantly more fiery, they are fiery in walks, thoughts, and actions. Like Vata is lean and thin like a goat, but Pitta, the fiery personalities are lion-like personalities, moderately built, but high-pitch volume. They are controllers. They are all the bureaucrats, diplomats, corporates. Those kind of people would be strong Pitta personality, fire in the belly. They are fiery in walks, thoughts, and actions. They are leaders. They are politicians. They are diplomats. They are kind of controlling. They say, come on, guys, follow me. I'm the boss. Pitta type personalities, right? So it's very interesting to understand these personality traits, their characteristics, and incorporate it to your daily life. Relating it from Ayurvedic perspectives gives you a new perspective of looking at your body, at its physical framework, at its psychological traits. It makes a perfect blend of the combination of different characteristics of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in the body, and you are able to analyze what is most predominant within you, and that helps you to assess what diseases are you are prone to get in future. I'll come to that later. But coming back to the third personality type, which is called Kapha, Kapha is more of water and earth element within them. That means they can be big body, broad shoulders, big muscles, and big bones, heavy voice, thick lustrous hairs. So Pitta, Kapha people would be elephant-like personality. They can be slow, lazy, and dull with a lot of energy but don't want to use. So that's the Kapha type personality. Now, Ayurveda says, according to what dosha you are most predominant, firstly, if you are more strong Vata, then you can easily have some Vata related disorders like anxiety, nervous system problem, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, insomnia, depression. All these could be paralysis. This could be more common in Vata predominant people. Those who are more predominantly Vata, they can have Vata related imbalances, which means neurological imbalances. That's why when I said neurological, I'm giving you an example of being depression, anxiety, insomnia, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, paralysis. All these are nervous system related problems, more predominant in Vata type personalities. If you're a Pitta personality, then you can have some other issues. Like if the hormonal enzymes or digestive enzymes are not in proper balance, then you can have hyperacidity. You have gastritis, you have heartburn, you have skin diseases, you have boils and pimples, you have hypertension, you have high cholesterol, you have redness in the eyes, you have anger. Even anger is a disease according to Ayurveda, although temporary, but it comes and goes. So in modern medicine, we don't see anger as a disease. It's not only a mental framework of mind, but it's a kind of a disease which comes and goes off and on. So you want to control the anger, to kill the disease, to finish it, because it also brings physiological and psychological imbalance in the body. So you see how interesting it is. If you have high cholesterol, pitta imbalance. If you have certain types of cancers, pitta imbalance. You have gastritis, pitta imbalance. Ulcerative colitis, pitta imbalance. Crohn's disease, pitta imbalance. All those diseases you can widely categorize under pitta imbalances. I'm just giving you in layman's terms, a simple example, just to make it understandable for your personal knowledge. You can explore it more on the internet, educate yourself. Kapha type personalities, heavy and stout, big bodies, elephant-like personalities. They can have obesity as a problem, as a disorder. They can have water in the lungs, emphysema. They have conjunctivitis. They have throat congestion or choking. You have a phlegm in the throat with a cough and cold and sneezing. That is kapha disorder. Obesity, kapha disorder. Hydronephrosis, water in the kidneys, inflammation of the kidneys, kapha disorder. You have heaviness in the head, sluggishness, laziness, too much of sleepiness, too much of tiredness, heaviness in the body, right? All these would be more of the kapha disorders. So you see, diseases are categorized according to your doshas. We call them as doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha. 3 dosha, we call them. The word dosha means the one which has got tendency to get out of balance is called dosha. We say dushyate anen iti dosha, which means one which has got a tendency to get out of balance. It is called as tridosha. Yeah. Are you? Everybody is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody who has any question at any point, please raise your hands. Ask me if you have any doubt.
I want to mention one thing.
Sure.
Because I know some people came a little late. So I want to make sure about you. Dr. Akhilesh Sharma is an Ayurvedic physician and consultant with 30 plus years of rich experience practicing and promoting Ayurveda across 19 countries globally. He has served as an advisor in Ayurveda to the government of Delhi in the past as well. He is a visiting faculty at California College of Ayurveda, Hindu University of America in USA, and a revered member of many national and international organizations for the promotion of Ayurveda. He is a practitioner of yoga, Director General of the Global Council of Hindu Leaders at the Hindu Acharya Sabha, which I belong to, and an advisor of the Valya community and long-time friend of mine. So I want to make sure you know him. He is our family member. Today is birthday and the National Naturopathy Day in India. His website is www.ayurvedatoday.org. So don't forget, you can ask any questions, especially this Corona time.
Sure. I'll be happy to answer. And you can take down my WhatsApp number also, which is +91 9810 360 372. Maybe Guru Dilip ji can write it down and so that everybody can have it. Thank you. Appreciate, sir. Now, you know what, I'll make it more simplified for people to take home some of the remedies of Ayurveda. I just give you an overview glimpse of the basic principle of Ayurveda. And you know, if you will compare this 5-element theory of Ayurveda with the modern atomic theory, you will see that you're talking about the same thing with different expression. But I think that you can read more on the internet also. Should I narrate that, Dilip ji, or I should go?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll narrate that then. You see, if we, modern medicine, we say everything is made up of atoms in modern atomic theory, right? But in Ayurveda, we said everything is made up of 5 elements, which they said 5,000 years ago in those Sanskrit books. Let us put these 2 theories together. Now, if we look into the structure of the atom according to modern atomic theory, so we look into the structure of the atom and it contains neutrons and protons in the center. Can you please send your WhatsApp contacts on chat box?
Just getting from your old message. Just coming.
360-372.
Yes, I am at California, Kamini.
Okay. Yeah.
Here. Did
Thank
you get?
Thank you.
103. No, I have to put +91. Dilip ji, can you correct?
I already put it. everything.
You
on
already,
chat box.
Dilip ji put the correct one. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I made a mistake. Yeah, thank you very much.
The
So-
link, this one doesn't come up.
Question is, you have to be in the spot.
No, this three.
You can talk about whole day here.
No, this three. That's it.
Somebody needs to mute.
Especially this.
Right. Please continue.
Okay. So Ayurveda says we are made up of 5 elements, and modern medicine says we are made of atoms. So if you look into the structure of atom, we look into the structure of atom, which contains neutrons and protons in the center of the atom, which carries weight and mass. According to Ayurveda, that is the earth element. Anything which carries weight and mass is the expression of the earth element. Then we say that electron is continuously moving in the orbit of the atom. That continuous movement of electron is because of the air element. And then we say that electron is a charged particle, and that charge, that energy or inertia, is expression of fire element. And then we say that there is a distance between neutrons and protons. Neutrons are present in the center of the atom, and an electron is present in the outer shell of the orbit. So, and there is a distance between the two, between the neutrons and electrons. That distance is nothing but the expression of space element. And then we say there is a humidity, or the moisture content of an atom is nothing but the expression of water element. So I'm saying, what I'm trying to say here is, are we talking about the same thing with different expression? That 5,000 years ago, we called it 5-element theory, and today we call it modern atomic theory. Just expression of the words, expression of the language has changed, but basic thought process is the same. So in the same way, so many striking similarities what you will find between the interpretations of what we are calling it modern day science has already been there. So knowledge was beyond space and time. It was there. It is everlasting. It will stay forever. It was there. It will remain in future. It was there in the past, and it is there in the present also. But looking at it has a different perception. Many people might say, well, why was I not taught Ayurveda in the medical school? Why I was not taught about the 5-element theory? I said, well, because I did not make the syllabus, because I was not part of the curriculum. So if we do not know something, that means we are suffering from a disease called ignorance. We didn't know that another expression or another part of the world has got some other knowledge to impart. We kept following one aspect of it, whatever we knew. The other things we were not aware of it from different cultures and civilizations, which were oldest or the documented ones in the world. Anyway, so this is the striking similarity between the modern atomic theory and the 5-element theory. 5-element theory is coming from Ayurveda, mentioned in all the scriptures of the books, also the Vedic philosophy too. Now, there's an interesting idea about the history of evolution of Ayurveda on this earth, which says, according to Vedanta, coming from those scriptures of Samveda, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda, which were the oldest documented literature on this earth. Vedas were the oldest documented literature. So if you look into Ayurveda, which is also exaggerated, called as the 5th Veda, was part of subdivision of Vedas. And they say that there's an example that way back many thousands of years ago, there was a roundtable conference held somewhere in Himalayas where people from intellectual class of the society got together, asked one very basic question to the Supreme Soul, that why are we here on this earth? What is the purpose? What is that we have to achieve? The creator of the universe smiled and he said, this is my creation. All of you are my subdivisions. You have to perform best of your duties towards yourself, family, and society. Do your karma towards yourself, family, and society, and ultimately come back to me and achieve the state of liberation or salvation, or in Sanskrit we call it moksha. Different religions have called it with some different names. Some people call it going to heaven in Christianity. That's how we express, right? Some people say liberation, some say salvation, some say moksha, some say enlightenment. All of them have more or less similar school of thought, similar idea. Ultimate goal is liberation. When everybody understood that ultimate goal is liberation, one of the fellow who was sitting in that roundtable conference, he stood up and he rose his hand. He said, "Sir, can I ask one question, please?" His name was Rishi Bharadwaj. The creator said, "Go ahead." Rishi Bharadwaj said, "Sir, if ultimate goal is to achieve the ultimate state of liberation or salvation, can you please give us something to keep us physically, mentally, and spiritually pure, healthy, and stable, so that we are able to achieve the goal of salvation comfortably?" This is what he said. Very wise man, Rishi Bharadwaj. They were like white-collared class of the society of that time, the thinkers of the society, opinion framers of the society. When he said that, "Why don't you give us something which keeps us physically, mentally, and spiritually pure and healthy, so that we are able to achieve the goal of salvation comfortably?" The creator of the universe smiled. His name was Brahmaji. He said, "Oh, my dear, you have asked me such a big favor in a tricky way. But now, since you have asked me, I am going to share this very divine knowledge which was meant for gods only. But I'm going to share this pure knowledge, divine knowledge, which if you are going to use and incorporate in your daily life, then you will be physically, mentally, and spiritually pure and healthy. So that when you become physically, mentally, and spiritually pure and healthy and balanced, then you will be able to achieve the goal of salvation comfortably." And that pure knowledge imparted was called as Ayurveda. So this is the history of evolution of Ayurveda, which tells you the connection between spirituality and healthcare. नीचे गाड़ी में कोई म्यूजिक तेज चला रहे हैं, उनको कोई बंद कर दे, धीरे कर दो प्लीज. Sorry, there's a loud music somewhere going on. I wanted to slow it down. नीचे. So you see, this is unparalleled example out of the history of medicine, which tells you why the hell do we need good health, and what is the connection between spirituality and healthcare. This takes you even beyond death, where Ayurveda says even death is a homecoming for the soul. So we should not be afraid of death. Death is inevitable. Death is a disease. It will come one day, and you have to go through that. So it's okay. That's why best doctors of the world also die one day. Right? So this is the most fascinating example out of the history of medicine, which tells you why do we need good health. If I say, okay, why do you need good health? You will say, well, I just want to be healthy and happy and good six-pack muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, do that happiness remain forever? Or do those six-pack muscles remain forever? No. They all decay one day. So, from modern medicine perspective, we are just looking into the not complete picture, but temporary goals. Or just being happy for a temporary period, or just having six-pack muscles for now. That's not sufficient according to Ayurveda. They say ultimate goal was liberation. So Ayurveda was a tool for you to be ultimately achieving the goal of liberation. That is our goal. But in modern medicine, we separate it aside. We forgot about spirituality. We forgot about liberation aspect. And that was the most blunder mistake we made when we played with the healthcare system, unfortunately. So that's why it is a package deal of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being according to Ayurveda. It's not only absence of a disease in the physical body means complete state of health. No. That's why WHO also had to correct their statement saying that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of an individual is the most important aspect if you want to be really healthy. That is what good health means. And good health is not the objective. Objective is salvation, liberation. So this is the most interesting example I wanted to share with you guys to know about. Now, talking about basic principles, as I said, these three forces, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, are present within all of us. Some people are more Vata, some are more Pitta, some are more Kapha, and some people are even combination of two, like air, fire, fire, water, water, earth. Some are combination of all the three also. So altogether, there are 10 types of body types according to Ayurveda. One is pure fire, pure water, pure air. Then combination by dosha. 6 of them, air, fire, air, like that. And one is tridosha, all the three. So altogether, there are 10 types of body types according to Ayurveda. So it's very interesting how they knew those things thousands of years ago. That's why we are billions of people on this earth and we don't resemble each other. Constitutionally, we are all different. Although we look alike with 2 eyes, 1 nose, 2 ears, 4 limbs, we look all alike. But you see, even the fraction of a difference of the body type makes you a new body type. What a creator he is. What a designer. Imagine trillions of people all over the world and nobody resembles with another one. That's why Ayurveda says eating right according to your body type, sleeping right according to your body type, according behavior, according diet, according code of conduct, according yoga exercises, it should be tailor-made. It's not like you make a one pill and you distribute to billions of people all over the world. They will all react to the same pill differently. That's why many people have side effects of such things. That's why things have to be tailor-made. That's why Ayurveda lays emphasis more on the kitchen pharmacology, homemade remedies, also where we say all these spices also which we are using have a deep-rooted medical effect on the body, pharmaceutical effect on the body. I call it kitchen pharmacology. That's why Ayurveda says food and medicine are not two separate things. It is the same thing spoken with different expression. So you are what you eat. As we say, the body chemistry of the body will depend on whatever you are putting in the body. So man is a miniature of nature. So these three vital forces, they travel like this, up and down and up and down and up and down from life till death. Question is, why do they get up and down? Why do they get out of balance? These three doshas. Because the food which you are eating is also containing those 5 elements. The water we are drinking is also containing those 5 elements. The air we are breathing in is also containing those 5 elements. So the ratio in which we combine the things and eat, that is going to affect the ratio of the 3 doshas in the body, and according balance or imbalance will occur. That's why we say food and medicine are not two separate things. It is the same thing spoken with different expression. That's why Mr. Hippocrates, who learned from Ayurveda, who also came to India in his life, and he said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. And this is what he learned from the basic principles of Ayurveda, where it has been said 5,000 years ago that food and medicine are not two separate things. It is the same thing spoken with different expression. That's why role of diet, role of food, role of type of food has a very important role to play in our lives. That's why the preventive healthcare model of Ayurveda is so powerful. If we are able to incorporate all the laws and practices and principles of Ayurveda in our daily life, then the preventive healthcare model becomes so strong that you don't need to wait for the disease to come and then get cured. But that doesn't bring business to pharmaceutical companies, with due respect to our medical system today. What we need to understand that swasthasya swasthya rakshanam means how to keep a healthy person healthy so that he continues to remain healthy. That is the goal of Ayurveda and yoga. That is why entire yogic philosophy, which teaches you meditation also, which teaches you, you know, let we call it mindfulness programs, all those things, life coach things, they teach you right kind of rules of laws or rules for life that balances you physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's why it is important to understand the package deal in totality, not merely the physical body. Not like, okay, when I have a headache, I want to have a pill. Then I go to the doctor and he'll give you a pill. No, we say, why the hell the headache had happened? What wrong did we do? Were we overwatching the TV? Were we stressed for something? But why were we stressed? If we were enlightened, if we were having enough wisdom, then we should not be stressed. We should think, we change our attitude. We say, oh no, those things happen. That's okay. Maybe I have to pay the price for my karma. Maybe it was divine's mercy. Yeah. So your thinking perception, the moment you change your attitude towards the problem, it is resolved. You are no more stressed. So these are simple things I'm telling you. But now what I'll do is I'll come to the main tips, which I want you to take some practical tips back home and incorporate into your daily life. The way I have tried to do is I generalize the body, and you want to start caring for different aspects of the body. Suppose we are talking about the brain. Yeah, think now brain as one of the ethnic race living in a cosmopolitan country or the city. Say, let's say in New York City, we see people from all countries, caste, creed, religion, sex, ethnicity, right? So this whole body is also a cluster of many clusters, or say many countries living in them. So brain is one of them, for instance. So for brain, to keep the brain healthy, we want to follow the simplest tips, like sleeping 8 hours is the key thing for brain. Imagine, this is the best nervine tonic. So the good quality sleep for the brain will act like a best nervine tonic you could ever imagine. We never thought like that. No neurophysician is taught like that, that teach your patient he has to sleep 8 hours, and if he's not sleeping 8 hours, how to make him sleep, or what is disturbing his sleep. We want to go deep into the cause of the problem and resolve that from the grassroots level. How simple is that, right? 8 hours of sleep, do regular meditation. You know, you can go to any good yoga school, go to Guru Dilip Ji and ask him. He can give you a huge network of database of all those people who are experts in the meditation. But our problem is we don't value them. We underestimate them. We think, oh, what is meditation going to do? I better take a pill. We are always looking into solutions into a pill. We forget about the preventive healthcare model of Ayurveda because we didn't know about it. Then another tool which all the yogis use is called pranayam, another good tonic for the nervous system, which is also part of the brain. Yeah, that is the assignment of the brain. He has to be the CEO of the company and he has to take care of the entire nervous system. So for them, all these things, meditation, 8 hours of sleep, pranayam, are going to be acting like a medicine. When I say pranayam, when we do anulom vilom pranayam, inhalation and exhalation of the oxygen supply, which increases the, stimulates the mental faculty, which increases the brain functioning, which increases or enhances the biochemical secretions happening in the gray matter. So all that would be controlled, governed just by simplest yogic practices like pranayam. There's one posture called Brahmari pranayam. all of you who are into this COVID-19 situation, all of you want to do Bhramari Pranayam because it de-stresses you. It promotes sound sleep. It fills you up with positivity. It takes away wards off all the negativity of thoughts and emotions with a humming sound like whoom coming from the heart chakra. That is going to fill your heart with positivity and take away, ward off all the negativities. So then tensions and stress and worries will go away. That will act like a tonic for the heart, tonic for the soul, tonic for the mind. So how we do Bhramari Pranayam? You put your thumbs into your ears, put this finger here at the junction of the hairline and the forehead, second finger on the eyebrows, third on the nostrils, partially block them, and this one goes on the cheeks. This is a little refined version of the Bhramari Pranayam. You partially close the nostrils, partially close the ears also, and put the thumbs in there, and then you take a long deep breath, and with a humming sound, the sound has to come from the heart chakra, remember. Keep your fingers here, let me just demonstrate. You take a long deep breath, close your eyes, and slowly breathe out like with the sound whom. The expression has to be whom. It is not om, it is whom. So we do like this. With closed eyes, take a long deep breath. Everyone wants to repeat it once more with closed eyes. We'll take a deep inhalation, hold your breath, and do a slow exhalation with a loud sound from heart chakra called whom. Yeah? It's like you can repeat it 5 to 7 times every day, morning and evening. If you do this, you know what is happening? It relaxes all the cranial nerves of the brain. It brings 40% more oxygen supply to the gray matter, to the brain. It is more effective than hyperbaric ventilation to bring more oxygen supply so that the brain cells become healthy cells and happy cells. Right? And when you say, it is like warding off all the negativity. If you look into judo, karate, and old time practices, if somebody is a fighter, is ready to fight, how do they react? They unconsciously speak that mantra. Whom is the loud mantra. Right? If somebody is going to attack you, yeah, and you want to protect you, how do you act? If somebody is using abusive language, you put both your hands like this on your waist and you say, right? Unconsciously, you do the same thing. But you do it consciously, say, that fills you up with positivity, with your strong willpower. Negativity, it wards off all the negativity of thoughts and emotions. See, we are just talking about Bhramari Pranayama. The most amazing yoga you could ever imagine. This will bring revolution neurologically in the entire world, which is need of the day. So we are still on the brain section. And you can do Bhramari Pranayam, then you can do Nadi Shodhana Pranayam, which is also called alternative nostril breathing. Guru Dilip Ji is the best yoga teacher sitting in front of you. You can ask him, he can teach you. Then a good brain tonic would be eating almonds every day. If you take 6 to 8 almonds, soak them in a cup of water overnight, peel them off, and you eat them regularly, that would be the best way to be serving your brain with a nurturing food. Then other good thing which is available in the Western market, fortunately now, is ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, mantequilla clarificada, we call it in Spanish, which is coming from the mother cow, which has got wonderful, wonderful ingredients in it. Some of the nutrients which are very good brain tonic. So you want to consume ghee for all your cookings. Let it be your rice, your lentils, your vegetables, all the green vegetables you want to cook with the ghee. Then certain Ayurvedic herbs are available in the whole food market, many supermarkets. They are actually Ayurvedic kind of medicines, but you want to buy those things. They are readily available as health food supplements. Like one of them is ashwagandha, where ashwagandha is also called Withania somnifera. You can read about the properties of ashwagandha on the internet. Fortunately, there you don't need a doctor, you need a Dr. Google. You go to Mr. Google and ask him what is ashwagandha. You put the keywords, key properties of ashwagandha. Here I'm not promoting any brand, remember, I'm just saying plain ashwagandha. Yeah, this is a Sanskrit name of a particular plant, yeah, called Withania somnifera in botanical name. So this is the most amazing herb you can use, even for the COVID-19 positive or affected or non-affected people also. They can use it as a preventive. It's an amazing remedy you can use. Imagine. It will also boost up the immunity of the body, and very interesting researches have been done for the last 30 years. And many of the intellectual property rights about ashwagandha have been taken by many other companies, even many American companies. Whereas we, Ayurveda people, have been sleeping, unfortunately. So right now it is readily available in the market. You can buy it as a brain tonic. You can use 1 capsule a day or 1 capsule twice a day, like that. And those who have any questions, you can ask me later also. You can also have ashwagandha. I can send you directly also, pure, direct from the source, from India. Another herb is called Brahmi, which is again very good tonic for the brain. The word Brahmi, the botanical name is Bacopa monnieri, and it is available by the same name at Amazon, at all the Whole Food stores now in US also. So that is a real gem lying there, but people have no idea. It is far better than many other so-called Nirvine tonics. So Brahmi is a good memory booster. It is a stress buster, good for anxiety, good for better quality sleep also, and good for insomnia too. So Brahmi can be used. Brahmi and ashwagandha are, this was about brain. Now let's very interesting, doctor. Okay, anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me. You can write me in the meantime.
I like to ask something, because a lot of time yoga people and naturopathy people, they always promote vegetarian food, even people like vegan, especially in America. What is a real story about food as a vegetarian or non-vegetarian in Ayurveda perspective?
Very good question asked, Gurudev. You see, I'll tell you, if you go through the Bible also, even Bible says it is good to be vegetarian than to be non-vegetarian. Ayurveda defines food into 3 aspects, 3 categories. We call them sattvic food, rajasic food, and tamasic food. Sattvic food is the one which brings you purity of thoughts, purity of emotions, purity of consciousness. The sattvic food is the one which is easily digestible. It is loved by all the senses, right? That is pure sattvic food. Sattvic food is the one where you're not killing any animal. Ayurveda says when you are killing an animal and eating it, all the carnivorous situation also, when you kill an animal, the curse is coming because nobody wants to die. Just like human beings, they also have a right to live. If we kill the animal and eat it, the curse is the negativity of thoughts and emotions, the anger, the hatred, which is coming from him. The curses, they will have a negative impact on you, and they will affect your purity of consciousness. It goes against. That's why you see today it is proven that people who are strong meat eaters, they also have certain strange behaviors, like they are short-tempered, they have a lot of anger within them, they have hatred, they have criminal bent of mind, very aggressive in approach. And it affects the clarity of the thought process also of their minds. And scientifically speaking, another reason which we have found that, there are 4 major killers of the world. One is diabetes, second is asthma, third is cancer, and fourth is heart disease. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and asthma. These 4 diseases are the major killers of the world. Now, these 4 diseases are 40% more common in strong meat eaters than vegetarians. That's proven. That's all documented, evidence-based. So that's why, for all those reasons also, it is really good to be eating pure vegetarian food where you're not killing an animal. Imagine, why don't we do like that? Why don't we kill humans and eat them? Why don't we go our neighbor and say, hey, you look so delicious. You must be good in the oven. So let me cook you and then eat you. We say, no, 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 that's a crime. You should be hanged for that. That is a murder. Right? As per law, that is a murder. Why? Because that is unethical. Why is that unethical? And why not killing the animals is unethical? Who gave us this right to kill them and eat them? We are the lawmakers. Don't they have the right to live? Don't they have to have right to make the laws? So wherever we went against the laws of the nature, we thought we are the superhuman beings. We have the right to do anything we want to. And we are using our veto powers rather than understanding their perspective as well. So that's why be kind to the animals, just the way we love our pets, cats and dogs. They are our friends, they are like become family friends, and they become like family members. It's a common practice. So why not to protect other animals too? And that is also bringing a lot of ecological imbalance. I don't want to go into all that detail. So, but, okay. Next, please tell some immunity booster to prevent COVID. Okay. Okay, we'll go further. So this was about being vegetarian. For the eyes, I would like to mention something. Massaging feet with the oil at bedtime before going to sleep was very good for the eyes, for improving the vision, for sound sleep as well. So that rods and cones muscles of the eye also get to a deep state of rest when they are in a sleeping phase. So they are also recovering, rejuvenating, more oxygen supply, more blood flow, and more of the restoration of the cells who are surviving. And so for that, any of the oil you can use sesame oil, you can use coconut oil, you can use mustard oil, you can use almond oil, you can use olive oil. Especially certain oils have, especially sesame, I must propagate sesame because sesame oil has got selenium in it, which is a very good tonic for the nervous system. So you should definitely protect your eyes by doing massage. First you wash your feet, rub them with the towel, and then put a little coating of the oil and do a circular movement on the palm of the feet. Yeah. Second thing you can do, you do the eye washing with Triphala. Triphala is a powder containing 3 herbs, Amla, Haritaki, and Vibhitaki in equal ratio. That is readily available in US in many markets. You can buy that. You can make a tea and do the eye washing with that, or you can drink the Triphala tea. That would be very good for strengthening rods and cones muscles of the eye, improves the vision, and also it is anti-aging in action. It is a good Rasayana immunity booster also. And another eye exercise you can do splash of the water on the eyes. Here, let me show you this simple yoga position you want to do. Every morning, what you do, you fill up your mouth with water and pop up your eyes like this. I'm sure you love this funny face. All of you look like this. but you have to look like this. You fill up your mouth with water and then pop up your eyes and splash water on your eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times you do this, then spit out. Again, you repeat this course. You do 3 rounds every day. Yeah, 3 rounds, 5 times splash, like this. Let water go into your eyes, that's okay. Yeah, this will increase the blood flow in the eyes also, reflexes get better, and strengthens the rods and cones muscles of the eye, increase more oxygen supply. That's going to be the best exercise for the eyes for improving your vision also, and protecting cataract, protecting all the eye disorders. Some of the other herbs you can use is amla or amlaki, which is available readily again in the US market also. Then you can buy something called Chyawanprash, which is such a good tonic available, and people have no idea. They keep spending billions for multivitamins, buying those chemically synthesized compounds, and they do not know that a real gem called Chyawanprash lies somewhere in the grocery stores and also in Whole Food stores, Amazon, many other places it is being sold. Those who want to know about source, they can ask me and read the properties of Chyawanprash. Just put the keywords, properties of Chyawanprash. Maybe, Griji, you can write the name Chyawanprash for them.
Yeah, I'll find out the exact word.
Okay.
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 Somebody was asking me,
Yeah.
people make a lot of herbal teas these days, for the
Right.
Corona, COVID time.
Right.
And what do you recommend?
Yes. See, the one thing is there are many herbal teas. Actually, to share the truth with you, I was the one who made the Ayush decoction for the Ministry of Health, Government of India, which has saved, touchwood, thousands of lives in India. Trust me, it is all documented. So that is one thing which you guys could also make there. And some of the things you can, what you can do is actually go to the Indian grocery stores and get some of the items and you make this tea. In fact, I disbursed about 1 million packets for free distribution for saving people's lives, which I'll tell you later on, or let me see if I have the whole recipe here. I'll be happy to share it with you. Okay, for now, let me share the immunity booster kitchen remedies which people can use. Most of the formulations which are containing some key herbs like giloy is one of the herbs. Giloy is called Tinospora cordifolia, which is a very strong immunobooster, also even used in India for HIV positive cases too and cancer patients too. So it's very good immunity booster, also subsides the fever, and ideal for all of us to use Giloy as an everyday thing. It's available in capsule form also. And second thing is ashwagandha, as I told you. Some of the other things which tea can also contain is cinnamon, which is readily available. Then you want to use clove, which is also good as a very good spice for immuno booster effect. Then you want to use black pepper. Black pepper is also good for short-term memory, long-term memory, and retaining capacity. Black pepper also works on thermoregulatory centers of the body, so it is able to control the fever also, and it is also bactericidal and bacteriostatic in effect, natural bactericidal, so it is good to use black pepper. You can use it in combination like in tea. You can use it like black pepper, ginger, honey recipe. You take 4 seeds of black pepper, take 1.5 teaspoon of honey, and you put some tulsi leaves, basilicum. If you don't find the Ocimum sanctum, the Indian variety, you can still use the albaca or basilicum available in the market in the US also, in grocery stores or supermarkets, it's available. So they will all boost your immunity. Chyawanprash wrote, can you put recipes on WhatsApp, please? Yes, I will put the recipe on WhatsApp later, and I will be happy to share. Dhiriji, you can share a video about the Ayush Kadha I can send it to you.
Yeah, please.
Okay. If you have a cough or throat irritation, let me tell you what you do. You take some jaggery, which is also called panela in Spanish, or gur in Hindi, right? Which is called sugarcane sugar in English. It's available at all the Asian grocery stores. Trust me, many of the things you will find fresh and cheaper at the Indian or Asian grocery stores. This is a secret I'm sharing with you guys, which you want to tell but take a pledge here to place today. Things which I'm telling you, every single person, you want to share this knowledge with at least 10 more persons.
Like Indian shop, Pakistani shop, Bangladesh shop, and the Nepal shop, Sri Lanka.
Yes,
all that.
All these people will have those things. Yes, thank you, Dilipji, for adding that. So what you can do, you take like four cloves, you grind them and in a pestle and mortar, and then you mix with 1 teaspoon of honey or the jaggery, and you lick it, and lick it 2 to 3 times a day. This would be very good for your cough or the throat irritation, which is a common thing happening during Corona. Other thing, Corona people or prevention of Corona, what you want to do, drink warm water the whole day from the morning, every day, just the warm water. This will, what does it do? It increases your immunity because it increases your Agni, increases your digestive fire, which as a result reduces your ama. All the bacteria and pathogens, the negative ones, they die. And it increases your immunity. See, what a beautiful natural immunity booster we have. We just raise the temperature of the water and drink it. Throughout, till the Corona goes away, make it a pledge that you will drink only warm water. Yeah? Okay. Some of the other spices which you want to use, like coriander, which is cilantro, also some people call it cilantro in English. Coriander, which is a cooling spice, digestive in action, improves digestion. Once your digestion is improved, remember, your immunity boosts drastically. Then you want to use garlic on everyday basis in the cooking. Garlic is also very good digestive, although reduces arthritis, it reduces any kind of inflammation in the body. It is also good for any kind of water retention in the body. It improves your digestive fire. It reduces your cholesterol. So for all those reasons, garlic is a good thing to use. Then curcuma, which is also called turmeric, which is called queen of all the spices, which is anti-inflammatory in action, which is also bronchodilatory in action, which also is good for the pulmons, for the alveoli, for their flexibility and elasticity. So you want to use turmeric or haldi on everyday basis in your cooking. What you can do, you can use turmeric as a bactericidal, virucidal. It is also antihistamine in action. It is also going to protect you and cure you from common cough and cold also, including people who are COVID positive. They can also use it. So also I would suggest you to make, please share your website. It is there on the top. Guruji shared it, but www.ayurvedatoday.org. Yeah. So here, I share the website. You can go there, and I do online consultations also. Those who want, they can talk to me later. But okay, coming back to black pepper, turmeric, curcuma. What you want to do is, here is one recipe. You take 50 milliliter of sesame oil, which is readily available at the grocery stores. In the 50 milliliter of sesame oil, you add about half teaspoon of turmeric or haldi, which is called curcuma. Yeah, and you heat it up gently in a small petri dish or something on the oven, and not in the microwave, please. And cook it gently for just few seconds. It will get mixed up because turmeric is fat soluble. It is not water soluble. When it is cooked with the sesame oil, the 50 ml sesame oil, you put it in the bottle. Now you use it like nasal drops, 2 to 4 drops in each nostril, twice a day on empty stomach, before breakfast, before dinner. Yeah, this is the natural protective mask also. It will help to act like a preventive guard standing on the nostrils. Will protect from your virus to get into the system. So this is one thing you want to use. All of you want to do that. And tell others too. Those who don't find, although there are ready-made preparations also available, there's one thing called Nasya oil. But the word Nasya itself means nasal administration. Nasya, available at Amazon also. There's another oil called Anu Tail, A-N-U, Anu Tail. Great session, sorry to have jumped off. I'm interested in the original studies. You mentioned that fall under category of knowledge as opposed to science. There has been a lot of reaction to peace lights that is similar. Okay, we'll talk about those things later. So for now, sesame oil, curcuma would be very good. And also, you guys want to take steam inhalation, very important. Steam inhalation 2 or 3 times a day for prevention and even for cure of corona, you know. Now, what cure in the sense, what I'm saying is, I'm trying to say that it is going to protect us, prevent us from getting corona virus multiply. And also it will die if you really use it properly. What you do is you add some mint leaves to the water. Yeah, in a big bowl with a wide open container. You take a towel, put it on the top of your head and cover it fully. You put some mint leaves, or you can put something called ajwain. Ajwain is also a kind of a star anise seed, which is available readily in the grocery stores like Indian, Asian, Chinese, Sri Lankan, Nepalese, all these stores have the ajwain because that is used for improving Agni, digestive fire of the body. It is a good immunomodulator and it is a good bronchodilator also for respiratory control. This has a significant role to play. So you can put some fresh mint leaves which are available in the supermarket and also buy some ajwain. Either you buy both of them and put in small quantity, or if you find either one of them, then also it's okay. So 2-3 times you want to do this. Can you talk about Ayurveda approach to hyperlipidemia? Okay, we'll come to that. So the other thing you want to do is the gargles of the throat, because the virus is entering through the nasopharynx or through the mouth and getting into the lung fields through the throat. So if you're doing regular gargles, you want to do it with potash alum. Either if you use the salt for doing gargles, saline water, or the other thing you can do is use the fitkari. Dilipji, how do we call potash alum? Fitkari is called what?
We call alum in my language.
Yeah. Common English language word is potash alum. If you go to those grocery stores and ask the word fitkari, also it's the most common name known, fitkari. You can get in crystal form. It will look like salt crystal. Yeah.
Right.
So what you do is you just want to put a pinch of it or 2 pinches of it in 1 cup of water, heat it together, boil it, and then you do cool it down a little bit with the lukewarm water. You want to do gargles, yeah, for the throat. If you do 2 or 3 times a day, would be ideal. Very good. And this will reduce down the viral load if infected, but otherwise also as a preventive measure also you can do that. Okay. Then golden milk, you want to make this recipe for sure. If you take 150 milliliter of leche entera, which means whole milk. If you get cow's milk, nothing to beat that. If it is organic, even better. But even if it is not organic, then you buy the regular milk, you add half teaspoon of turmeric in that, yeah, and you boil it 3 times to the boiling point, and then you want to drink it. So that will be also called as golden milk. Or you can make another recipe. You take 1 glass of milk, you add about 4 almonds, 4 or 6 almonds without the skin. Yeah, first you put them in water overnight in a cup of water, then peel off the skin, crush them, put them in the milk. And then you can add a little bit of turmeric. You can add 2 dry dates to that also. And a little bit of saffron, about 4 to 6 petals. That saffron also you can get from the grocery stores. So 4 almonds, 2 dry dates, and a little bit of saffron. Add them all together from the beginning, semi-crushed form, and boil the milk on a slow heat till the 3 boils. Yeah, 1 boil, 2nd boil, and 3rd boil. After 3rd boil, you want to drink that milk without filtering. Now, this is the best immunomodulator booster. Milk, out of chain of 22 amino acids, milk contains 18 of them, which are needed for the basic building blocks of the body. So if you're drinking milk on an everyday basis, it also brings you sound sleep, best source of calcium, and for basic building blocks of the body, this is a complete food for the real yogis, especially, I would say. So this thing you want to do for immune boosting. Few other immune booster foods like broccoli, for instance, is very good. Broccoli increases your vitamin A. Yeah. Then it is a very good antioxidant also. It brings you nourishment till the cellular level. Then another good source of vitamin A is popcorn. You guys want to eat. It is readily available, cheap. You can eat corn or you can eat popcorn. And another good fruit, the ideal fruit in this time is pineapple, piña. Can you substitute regular milk for almond milk? No, please. It has to be actually regular whole milk. There's a big misconception. We have forgot about the real milk. Cow's whole milk cannot substitute. Almond milk is almond milk. It is not cow's whole milk. The chemistry is different. Okay, so don't substitute that, please. Take the milk. Those who are only lactogen intolerant, they can avoid milk, but rest of all of you have to drink milk. Okay, it is like a nectar, amrit from the cow. That is how exaggerated it has been said, and it has been proven also now. Pineapple. What pineapple does, it actually makes a layer on the antibody cells. This is the secret I'm sharing with you guys. That's why it works by preventing the entry of the viruses in the body, because antibodies become very strong. They don't let them enter in. So pineapple is one of the drug of choice as a fruit. Turmeric, as I spoke, it is antioxidant, antiviral, it cleanses the liver also, blood purifier, bronchodilator. It controls blood sugar also. So comorbid conditions, people with diabetes, they are using curcuma or turmeric on an everyday basis in their cooking. They are controlling their liver function. They are controlling their sugar levels also. Any kind of inflammatory conditions in the body. And it promotes the Agni, and it is antiviral also. So use turmeric and every day. What is a great source of zinc? I'll come to that. Amla, another fruit I wanted to share. Amla is very good alkalizer, rich source of vitamin C, of course. You get it through Chyawanprash also, but you can buy direct amla powder as well. It is a good antacid. Yeah. Remember, whenever your body is more acidic, your immune system goes low. You have all the opportunistic infection, even things like cancer can attack you. The great source of zinc, pistachios is one of the great source. Then you can have peanuts, they are good source of zinc. Then amla is also a very good cardiac protector. So it will also help to pumping of the heart. So there is a heart-lung machine works very well. The exchange of oxygen supply is not affected adversely if you're using amla. So that is going to, whatever is going to be protective for the heart, it is going to be bringing more oxygen supply to the body and create more of an immunomodulatory aspect for people getting affected because of COVID, because it is strengthening your lung fiber. Okay, then also you can use ginger. Remember, ginger is also very good antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. It is a natural antibiotic. It is anti-inflammatory. So you want to use ginger on everyday basis in your cooking. You can also make a ginger pickle. Ginger pickle is like this. You take, just like French fries, you know, you make the slices, long slices of this size, of the size of a finger, the ginger. And you dip them in fresh lemon juice, the lime juice actually, and put a little bit of pinch of salt. You dip them well, like you fill up the half of cup of half cup with the lemon juice, fresh lemon juice, squeezed lemons, and then dip those fingers of ginger slices in there. Leave them for 4 or 5 days. And every day for 2 hours, if you can expose them to the sun, it would be really nice. Put it close to the window. When it is ready in for about 5 days' time, then every day with every meal, you take out 2 slices of zinc and you chew them little by little in between the meals. When you're having rice or you're having, lentils or soup, you can use them with anything, with chapati also. So having that together with also cut down on your phlegm, promote your Agni, also give a immunity booster activity. And take away your pains and aches also, even good for the fever too. For common cough, cold, fever, viral fever too, the flu fevers, this is ideal thing to use. You can use ginger in your black tea also. Then green pepper is also one of the best superfood you could ever imagine. That you want to use regularly. It is readily available, not very expensive. You want to use that as a vegetable and cook it with curcuma, with cumin, with coriander, with ginger. I'll tell you one interesting thing. I made a survey in last 4 months of my working with this COVID patient worldwide and webinars. I made an interesting survey. What I saw is majority of those vegetarian groups in America or other parts of the world where I've traveled to, I've been interviewing, like people from, say, Hare Krishna movement. They were all saved, protected. Why? They were using all those Indian spices which are able to beat coronavirus. They were using khichdi, they were using ghee, they were using turmeric, ginger, cumin, coriander, curcuma, black pepper, cinnamon. All these spices which I'm talking, they have been using in their foods for centuries. They were all saved. All those people, the whites also, who came into association with Gaudiya Math or Hare Krishna or Ananda Marga or Swaminarayan school of thought groups, people from Gujarat, from Indian community, they all have been saved. Unfortunately, the tragic part is many of the Americans died, but Indian community, you hear very few people died. Why? What has saved them? It's using those spices and being vegetarian. Cooking the food vegetarian way, with ghee, with oils. But strong meat eaters, unfortunately, this virus have been found to be meat lover, right? Animal protein lover. That's why, so people who have been into strong meat eating, they have died mostly. Although they had robust body, doing regular exercise, many of those things were good in them, but they died tragic death just because virus has a strong affinity for the meat eating people. So it was an interesting survey I made through all over the world, the countries I've traveled through. Can you touch upon the importance, if any, of alkalinity? Yeah, alkalinity, as I said, is the key source of boosting up your immunity. For alkalinity, what you want to do, you want to eat all the cooling and soothing spices. Like fennel is very good, right? Cumin is also very good. It is an antacid, creates alkaline, increases your pH value on the alkaline side. Yeah. And cancer cells grow in the acidic media. If it is alkaline media, they will start receding. Cardamom is very good for that. Cinnamon is good. Licorice is very good. Then some of the vegetables I'll tell you, like squash, zucchini, pumpkin. Yeah, these are the vegetables you want to eat more. Then you can eat bitter gourd. You can have coconut water. You can have aloe vera gel. All these things are going to promote more of the alkalinity and going to help you to protect you. So eating more of the green vegetables, especially the one I gave the names of, would be best source of choice. Okay, then try to eat steamed, cooked and baked food. Try not to eat the raw foods at this time, but steamed, cooked and baked food, which is more easy to digest. It will not take too much of your Agni and it will boost up your immunity. So eat the spices oriented food, which is Indian origin, because you see, entire Indian cooking has a direct influence of Ayurveda. That's why Indian cooking is very scientific. So you want to avoid red chilies, you want to avoid hot pepper, you want to avoid uh, black pepper also. Not too much, I mean, moderately you can take black pepper, but in small portions. But red chilies, green chilies, you want to avoid. More of the pH value increasing things you want to drink. You want to drink coconut water, you can make a fennel tea, cinnamon tea, they would all be good. You can make at home also. Buy some cinnamon, buy some cardamom, and make the tea just with those two ingredients. Right? You don't have to look for expensive because economy is also one of the concern right now because a big economic challenge. I want you to learn more and more things and ask me more recipes. I'll be happy to share and use them. And for using cooking, as I said, using ghee, you can use coconut oil is another option. Using olive oil, you can use peanut butter, you can use sunflower oil, papaya, and avocado oils are also good. Then mung dal, there's a special lentil called mung dal, which is the best source of protein, natural protein coming from the agriculture-based things. Yeah, that is the perfect replacement of meat protein. So those who say, what is the solution if I don't eat meat? How do I get my protein? Well, you drink milk regularly or you buy mung dal and eat it. Mung dal is most easily digestible. You know, one more interesting thing about eating green vegetables, you know why? Because body has got strong affinity for the green vegetables. It takes 6 to 8 hours for green vegetables to digest into the body. But if you're eating strong meat, it takes about 72 hours for the meat to assimilate into the system. That means the body doesn't like it. The body says every day, damn it, this body doesn't listen to me. The little cell living in the duodenum says, this body doesn't listen to me. Damn it, I don't like this non-vegetarian food every day. And he's not listening to me. He becomes a rebellion. And ultimately, one day, he becomes such a rebellion that he transforms himself. He said, I'm going to die suicidal death, but I will teach this body a lesson. Then he collects some other rebellions. They make a kind of a terrorist group in the body, right? That is what we call them as cancer cells. And they multiply. If they win the race, they multiply faster and they make the body die. So to save them, what we have to do, we really need to work at barfooting level, not them to become revengeful, and serve the food the body loves, not the one your mind loves or your taste buds love. No, make a sensory control and eat what is right for you. Okay, can you use sesame oil for cooking? Very good question. Yes, you definitely can eat sesame oil. Sesame oil has got important ingredients. It has got selenium, which is a tonic for the nervous system. It has got zinc, cobalt, copper, iron, manganese, sulfur in it. All these are modern medicine perspectives, chemical constituents, which are basic need for the body also. So you can use sesame oil for cooking. But let me tell you another application of sesame oil. You want to do sesame oil body massage, whole body massage. And boy, not the overcooked one, not the Chinese style. Please, for God's sake, we had enough from Chinese guys. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not criticizing, but but the over-baked oil, no. You want to buy the regular cold-pressed one or the brown-colored oil, sesame oil. It's called gingerly oil, available readily at all the Asian Indian grocery stores. Unrefined oil is okay to use. Yes, it is okay. So when you buy that oil, what you do on everyday basis, it will really boost up your immunity. I'll tell you how to do application on the body. What you do is you take a shower, hot shower, suppose you took the hot shower, apply the soap, clean the body. When the body got all cleaned up, now the pores are open. Now you pick up the bottle of sesame oil. You take 1 teaspoon on your hands and do like this. Now you equally spread it fast, then the oil stays on your hands. It doesn't spill on the ground in the bathroom. You first tap it like this on your legs. Imagine I'm doing the same thing on my legs. Equally distribution, and then you give a rub. In the phase 2, you give a rub on the legs, right? That is 1 teaspoon. Now, second teaspoon, make it on your hand, put it like this again, splash it on your chest, on the back, on the waist, and on the shoulders around, and give a nice rub. Here also. Yeah, arms and trunk. Then you take third teaspoon and you do like this. You put it on your head. Do like this. Yeah. After that, you want to put it in your ears. Lubricate your fingers, roll them into your ears, into your nostrils, inside. Inside the bathroom is not bad manners. You can do it. Okay. So don't worry, don't feel shy about it. And then around the throat, neck, shoulders. Now your entire body got coated like a chicken, ready to broil. Yeah. So after coating the whole body, this you did after the first shower. As remember, first you apply the soap, clean the body is still wet, then you put the oil and do the massage. You haven't used towel yet. After this oil massage, you go into the shower again. You stand underneath, don't use soap this time, just water. And then you start rubbing your body under the water. It will become emulsion of oil and water. Yeah, rub the body for a couple of minutes. What will happen? The excess oil will spill down in the bathroom and there will be a thin, fine coating of sesame oil standing on the body. Now imagine, what does it do? It is having like a thermoregulatory effect on the body. In such a way, it increases warmth in the body. It protects you. It is like you are wearing an extra thermal wear on the body. It creates more muscular flexibility, more elasticity. It will not smell bad because the thin layer has been uniform layer formed on the body, which will not be very greasy. Yeah, it will make sound sleep. More muscular flexibility, more of the bony flexibility and elasticity. And skin being the largest organ of the body, the nervous system lives here. Then you did massage here, which contains selenium, which is a tonic for the nervous system. It relaxes you, calms you down, better sleep pattern. One application of oil like this is equal to 2 kilometers of walk every day. Imagine. Physiologically, this is how it works. We have done interesting studies on this, and this has been the most fascinating thing. So everyday basis, and after that, after the second application of oil and then water, then you're rubbing, and after that you can pull up the towel and do the pat drying, like just the tapping, no rubbing, and then you wear the clothes. Do it for 1 week every day. You see, you will become a different person. In 1 week time, you will say, oh, you know, I've been eating my breakfast in my bathroom. That was my breakfast. Having sesame oil, eating through the skin, that was it. Your energy level boosts up. You don't need to eat anymore. Try that. See the effect and write back to me. Give me the feedback. So remember, if you don't write to me, don't give me the feedback, you didn't pay my fee. So make sure you pay my fee. I want to know how did it go. Okay. There is a tendency for people to use painkillers and various medicines to block, bypass pain signals, etc. Yes, sesame oil is the best answer for that. What are some natural solutions for pain so that we do not have to resort to strong medicines? Yeah, okay. As I said, sesame oil massage is one aspect. The other thing you can do using curcuma, using ginger, these are all the very good natural painkillers, right? Then another thing you can do, milk and curcuma combination, which is called golden milk. This you can drink. Another natural remedy from the kitchen is fenugreek seeds, which is called fenogreco in Spanish, or we call it fenogreco in Spanish, or methi dana in Hindi also. It's a yellow in color, small seed-like thing. What you can do, you take 1 glass of water, you soak 1.5 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds, leave it overnight. Next day morning, you chew them, eat them, and drink the water as well on empty stomach. If you do this, this is the best medicine, which is anti-arthritic in action also, far better and safer than things like Tylenol. And it's very effective remedy for all kind of joint pains also, nerve pains too. Ashwagandha also has a similar role. If you're drinking ashwagandha with milk, also will serve the purpose. So this is methi dana, or called fenugreek seeds, available at all the Indian grocery or Asian grocery stores. In Western supermarkets, people may not know, but it has amazing beneficial effects. You can read about it more on the YouTube with my programs, or you can find it on the Google map also. So that was about the pain part and how much water one can drink. Well, ideally 6 to 8 glasses of water or little more you can drink, depends on individual's body and need and how much hard work you're doing, how much sweat out you are doing every day. So those who are doing a lot of manual work and labor, they need to drink good amount of water, but 8 is the average, which I told you. And preferably during the winter season, especially during the corona period, drink warm water would be ideal for you. Any other questions? I would love to invite the questions now, I think, so that we, make it more of a, and yeah.
I have one question.
Yes,
This is
please.
Kamini.
Yes,
Yes, I heard that refined oil and unrefined oil,
Yeah.
better to use, but we very hard to find refined oil. So it's okay to use unrefined.
Yes,
most of the
it
time.
is okay to use, and change the oils from time to time. Don't keep just one variety. Keep changing them. Like I
And
gave you
this
many
is
options:
olive
olive oil, coconut oil, ghee. Ghee is although the best of the best. But you can use sesame oil also for cooking. You can use peanut oil, but keep changing from time to time.
Okay, thank you.
Ayurvedic
And I put in one question regarding Shatavari powder. I just
Okay,
heard
I'll come to that. Yeah.
Right.
Shatavari, what was the question?
Shatavari, how to use it and what is benefit for
Okay,
that?
okay. See, if you get the Shatavari powder, you can take about 3 grams, which is about 1 teaspoon, full teaspoon, which you can use either with milk or you take it with honey. You can take it twice a day, mix it with honey and lick it, and then drink a glass of or sip of warm water and swallow it. You can take it after breakfast and dinner, or you can take it as a part of the breakfast also. If you take Shatavari powder, mix it with a glass of milk and boil it 3 times on a slow heat, boiling 3 times, then drink it like a smoothie. That is also another option.
Okay. What is benefit for that? Good
Well,
for
Shatavari is a very good gyno-uterine tonic. It's more like a feminine tonic, good for women, good for better quality lactation, good for making your endometrial lining healthy, good for, fertility, for vigor and vitality, for libido. It has got natural phytoestrogens for hormonal balancing, for better quality lactation. Lactating mothers, very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Even for menopause also you can use that, for hot flashes condition. Ayurvedic treatment for hyperlipidemia. Well, hyperlipidemia, fenugreek seeds, I told you the same thing will work for that also. Eating fenugreek seeds regularly in your sabzi, which is vegetables, and also drinking it soaked overnight in a cup of water. Next question is, can we take Triphala powder daily in case of constipation? Yes, you can take it daily. It is non-habit forming, absolutely safe. Triphala has got many properties. It is a good rasayana, which is rejuvenator and revitalizer. It improves your eye vision also. It prevents your hair fall. It is anti-wrinkle, anti-aging, so a good antioxidant. Yes, so you can use that safely. It releases constipation also. Any other question? How much time do we have, Dilipji?
We have 4 more minutes, 2 o'clock.
Okay.
I have another event. That's right.
Okay. So let me take any more quick questions you want to ask. One thing I want to say, you want to eat 75% of your appetite. Don't eat full stomach, 100%. Yeah. And also using regularly the tulsi or basilicum would be very good idea, because basilicum or tulsi has got antimicrobial peptides which work against the coronavirus also and gives the antiviral protection to us. Yeah. Any questions, please? Can we take the powder? Please, how much aloe vera one can use taken raw? Okay. Okay. For aloe vera, there's a company called Forever Living. They make the best brand actually. You can find it online also. It'll be more cheaper. So you buy the aloe vera gel, crystalline gel, but not the juice. Gel, the purest form of gel is, and buy the plain one. They have a flavored one also, but you look for the plain version. And you can take about 30 milliliter of aloe vera, which is 4 tablespoons twice a day, in the morning on empty stomach and in the evening before having dinner. So that's the best way to take aloe vera. That will make also healing coating lining on the walls of the intestine and also gives you many minerals. So aloe vera is multidimensional. It's a very good natural tonic you can use. And please tell how much aloe vera. Okay. Best way to use tulsi. Okay. Tulsi, you can make tulsi tea, like suppose you're making regular tea, black tea. You can take 4 or 6 leaves of tulsi, you semi-crush them, make them like a paste, and just semi-crush them, and then put them in the boiling tea. You can drink it. You can also make a recipe when you have throat congestion or throat irritation, even COVID positive or non-positive cases. You can take 4 or 6 leaves of tulsi, you semi-crush them, add 4 seeds of black pepper and half teaspoon of ginger, grind them all together, and then you mix it with a little bit of honey. Yeah, 1 spoon, 1.5 teaspoon, and mix them all together. Make it like a paste in the small bowl, and you lick it with your finger like that. Why we say it's licking it with finger? Because the tactile response, the tongue would know how much is sufficient. With the spoon, it is a robot-like action. You don't touch the surface of the tongue, the surface of the metal to the surface of the tongue. So it's better to do it like this. That's the right way. That's why, in Indian cooking and Indian tradition, we used to eat without spoon. In Southern India, I'm sure Guru Dilip can tell much more to you. We eat rice also, mixing them with head, with the taste, touch, with the smell, with the feel, and then we eat. That has a different impact altogether. So licking it with finger, this recipe would be very good to use. Is Jalneti good to prevent corona? Yes, Jalneti could also be good, but at the same time, what I said is you want to use the saline water, but if you're doing steam and gargles also would be very good. And the sesame oil, curcuma, nasal drops, which is very readily available and you can do it in a lesser time. And this message you want to spread everywhere. So I think with that, I'll sum up and say namaste to everyone. Thank you to Guru Dilip Ji for giving me this opportunity to be part of this August group. You can write me an email, but preferably WhatsApp is the best way to reach me. Although I have hundreds, sometimes thousands of messages coming every day, but I do reply, and feel free to ask any questions. I do online consultations also. For that, you have to sign up for the time and everything, and we can do that. But please propagate more of Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, and Guru Dilip Ji. I admire him for all what he does for the community. And, we can challenge this Corona times also by the strength of Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, its philosophical aspect and physiological care too. So with that, I'll say namaste to everyone and good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Agalesh Sharmaji. That was wonderful to hear you again. In the last 15 years, I know you from Indian Consulate. You had the international conference on Ayurveda. That's the first time we had a wonderful meeting. Since we keep that friendship as positive as it is. I am so happy we are doing things together. So thank you everyone. I have another event coming up at 3 o'clock, so I had to prepare for it. So we'll continue this dialogue because this is very important to bring Ayurveda, naturopathy. Yoga already is established, but some people don't want Ayurveda and naturopathy to grow around the world. Last year, I had a discussion with the director of the World Health Organization, and she's so happy when we brought this idea. And we are working on that part. I hope and the world will acknowledge the truth about the health and wellness. We say well-being. I'm the vice president of well-being club at the UN. So let us see how we can move forward and recognize a traditional system which is good for everyone, not only for Indians, not for only for Americans, for all world should know what is Ayurveda and all other techniques. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you very much.